right, welcome to another candidate conversation from 25 Women for 2020, co-sponsored by the Progressive Democrats of LaPorte County. Tonight, we are thrilled to have State Senator J.D. Ford with us, and we are going to devote this entire discussion to LGBTQ issues in Indiana. There are going to be a lot of personal stories, and this is a very personal issue. And so I look forward to talking to everyone about this and about how we can do better in our Indiana state legislature. So, so let's go through quickly and we will introduce our candidates. Okay, and we are going to start with Kat.
Thanks, Deb. First up, we have Cinde Wirth.
Oh, sorry, sorry, someone changed the order on me. Sorry. There's Cindy. Let me put you. There we go. Sorry.
There's Cindy. And Cindy, tell us what district you're from and what's the best place to reach you.
So I'm running for State Senate District 44, and the best place to find me is at www.cindy4indiana.com. So it's
Thank you, website. Cindy. And go ahead, what's your website?
Oh, sorry.
Well, we moved on to Kat. Hi, Kat. How you doing? Tell us your district and the best place to reach you.
Hi there. My name is Hardwick. I'm running here in House District 69, and you can reach me at kathardwick.org or over Facebook, Kat Hardwick for Indiana District 69.
Perfect. Thank you. Next up, we have Tiffany Grant.
Okay, so I had it there.
There she is. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi.
Tell us about your district and best place you'd like to be reached.
Yes, my district is District 60, Morgan and Monroe counties. And the best place to reach me is probably by email, Tiffany Grant for district60@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
Easy to do. And our next candidate is Gary Davis. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you. I'm Gary Davis, a candidate for Indiana State Senate District 8.
And what's the best place to reach you? Do you have a website or a social media page you'd like us to visit?
The best place to reach me is davisforsenate.com.
Perfect. And next up, we have Tabitha Bartley. Tabitha, what's your district and how would you like us to reach out to you?
Yes, so I'm running for Indiana State Senate District 7, which covers portions of Boone, Carroll, Clinton, Jasper, Tippecanoe, and all of White County. Best place to reach me is using my handle on social media, which is Bartley for Indiana.
Very good. And next, Angela Elliott. Angela, tell us your district and where we can find you.
Hi, I'm Angela Elliott, and I'm running for state representative for House District 93, and that includes parts of Marion County on the southwest side of Indy, and also parts of Johnson County in the Center Grove and Greenwood area.
Appreciate that, Angela. And last but definitely not least, we have Pat Boy. Hi, Pat.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. What's your district and where can we reach you?
District 9, it's the western side of LaPorte County and the northeastern part of Porter County. And
Perfect.
You can probably reach me at Pat for Indiana, Pat number 4, Indiana at gmail.com.
Sounds good. And back to you, Deb.
I'm not sure how functional it is right now.
Gotcha. We'll reach out to you. And back to you, Deb.
All right, great. So, so first, we'd like to hear from JD. And JD, you know, this is, you're in the middle of your first term as a state senator, and you have been very open about your sexual identity, your sexual preference, and about this being a major issue for you. And so I wonder if you could just give us a little background on what's been happening in the Indiana State Legislature regarding LGBTQ issues.
Yes, well, thank you, Deb, and thanks to all of you for being here tonight. It's great to see all of you. We've got some terrific and amazing candidates on the ballot this year, and happy to spend some time with all of you, and more importantly, happy to spend some time talking about LGBTQ issues. So as many of you know, I'm Indiana's first openly out-serving member of our legislature, and so I was elected in 2018 during the midterm elections. And as Deb pointed out, I'm serving in my first term. Gosh, I have to admit, I'm so thankful that I'm not on the ballot this year. I certainly could not, even fathom what you all are going through in regards to running a campaign. I know running a campaign is already stressful as it is, and throw on the top of, us going through the COVID-19 crisis. But I'm so proud of all of you for putting your name forward and stepping forward to serve your communities. So, but yeah, so I was elected in 2018, and I've been in the legislature for about 2 years now, and I'm really honored to be there. And do consider myself one of our experts in the legislature in regards to LGBTQ plus issues. But I wanted to spend some time kind of talking about how we got to this point. And so that kind of takes us back a couple of years. And really, my involvement, getting involved as a kind of a bystander at first, and then getting down to the State House for the different rallies and different protests. But really was when the state decided to put the definition of marriage between a man and a woman as the official definition of marriage into the state constitution, which was known as HJR 3 or HJR 6. And, it was really at that point that I decided that I needed to really do something outside of just, coming down and protesting and writing my elected officials. And then when we saw the coalition, the Freedom Indiana Coalition, work together with Republicans and Democrats to beat that, that really gave me a lot of hope for our state. So why that's so important is because, there were some Republicans who lost their seats because of their vote on that issue. And it really, really kind of angered a lot of the folks who are not very pro LGBTQ plus. So the next year, they came back with RFRA, also known as the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, RFRA. And, we saw the damage that was done to our state when then Governor Mike Pence signed that legislation into law, and really set the, kind of the state into a tailspin. We are still dealing with the ramifications of that to this day, the RFRA battle. Recently, there was a conservative attorney who has been arguing all along that this was not about, discriminating against LGBTQ plus people. Yet they're in court saying that exact same thing, that this was always been about discriminating against LGBTQ plus people. So that's what the Religious Freedom Restoration Act has always been about. And I'm happy to see that the curtains are being pulled back, and we're getting actually to see, what that argument truly has been. So if that wasn't bad enough, then we move on to the hate crimes legislation. And, the couple years that we attempted to try and do something. And, and finally in 2019, we passed a very watered down hate crimes legislation. And you're going to hear some of the candidates talk about that. So I won't go into too much of the details, but I really wanted to paint this picture for you all because, the LGBTQ plus community has really been under attack, in my opinion, for the past couple of years. And I think that my arrival to the legislature really has been, our way of saying we're not going to tolerate this anymore. We believe, I know we all believe, that we should have representatives inside the legislature that looks like Indiana. So even the fact that I'm our only out-serving member of the community in the legislature, we definitely need more LGBTQ folks running for office and in the legislature and serving in the hopes that we can, beat back some of these policies and procedures that, our friends on the other side of the aisle come up with. Really, what I would always like to point out to them is that, again, up until my arrival, they didn't have anybody to push back on some of these really right-wing policies. And so, now I get to kind of work behind the scenes and build good relationships with some of my partners and let them know, like, hey, like you got some gay people that live in your district. You have some transgender Hoosiers that live in your district, and you need to know that, you know, what you're saying at the microphone or in the newspaper is really hurtful to some of these people. And so that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, is that I get to be there, I get to be at the table in the room where it happened, if you will. And so, you know, and I think we definitely need more of that. And if we can't get, you know, more LGBT folks to office, we certainly need folks that believe in advancing policies for LGBTQ plus Hoosiers. So, you know, the Supreme Court recently ruled that folks cannot be terminated because of their employment status, because they're LGBTQ plus. You know, we still have a lot of fight to go here in Indiana in regards to housing protections. My colleague, and hopefully your soon-to-be colleague, Representative Chris Chung, and Senator Stoops, who is leaving the legislature a couple years ago, filed a bill on conversion therapy to ban that in our legislature. And so I would like to pick up that torch and run with it for the 2021 session. And so I'm happy to work with all of you on that, because we know that, you know, that the conversion therapy is dangerous. We know that that our youth are really, we have one of the highest LGBTQ youth suicide rates. And so, you know, we really need our youth to feel loved and supported. You know, I was just talking with some folks about Trinity Haven, which is opening here in the city of Indianapolis, which will be a kind of a housing facility for folks who get basically, you know, kicked out of their homes for being who they are and who they love. You know, and so we know that these statistics are on the rise. We know that these kids need to be loved and supported. And so I'm really, you know, really want to kind of lean into this fight with all of you, particularly on the conversion therapy ban. But also we saw in the last legislative session that our own Indiana Bureau of Motor Vehicles came out and said, you know what, if folks want to, you know, identify not as a male or a female, but they want to identify as a different gender, okay, so be it. Let's put a marker on their driver's license, and, you know, let's let them be who they are. And unfortunately, you know, our Attorney General Curtis Hill basically fought that and said that that can't be. So, I mean, and here, let's just stop and think about this for 1 second. Putting an extra marker on the driver's license isn't going to cost the state any more money, right? It would just be one small, simple act that the state of Indiana can do to show its true Hoosier hospitality. And yet we can't even do that. So I do think it's important that we, you know, get you all into the House of Representatives and into the state Senate, so we can really, like I said, advance the LGBTQ plus policies for Hoosiers in our state. So
that's great. So I just feel so fortunate to have you as a champion for the LGBTQ community. We're very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to hear from some of our candidates now, and we're going to start with Cinde Wirth. So Cinde, tell us what your particular issues are that you want to advance concerning LGBTQ issues.
Thank you, Deb and Shannon, for hosting, and thank you, Senator Ford, for all of your work that you've done, and Representative Boyd for yours also. I'm excited by the work both of you have done already, and I can't wait for more. So on a personal note, as a classroom teacher, I've seen so many times something that starts as a meme or a joke or a thinly veiled anti-LGBTQ comment. And then, like an invasive weed, it spreads. So tiny little seeds of hate throughout the community, reinforcing itself until it seems as if it's always been there. And this hate hijacks our communities and sucks the very nutrients that a loving and empowering community needs to thrive and grow. While hate and intolerance are establishing themselves in a community, love and empowerment waste away. This has happened in our state legislature, as Senator Ford just told us about. In 2015, the Indiana General Assembly passed that RFRA, and that action of introducing and passing a piece of legislation that legally allowed discrimination specifically targeting the LGBTQ community was a direct attack on every LGBTQ person and every ally. And I don't disagree with you, Senator Ford, that it is an attack. That vote emboldened every hateful thought to become an action, and it inspired more. And the discrimination politics that we're seeing is outrageous and it's immoral. And Indiana can do better. RFRA was walked back, but not because Hoosier leaders valued my daughter's life, her wife's life, or the lives of any LGBTQ persons. It was walked back because of economic sanctions. Money. It was money that made the difference, not a social conscience and not caring for people. 2 years later, my daughter graduated from college, and she and her wife had to move out of their first apartment due to blatant discrimination and harassment. They chose to make another state their home. They feel that the Indiana they both grew up in, they went to college in, and that they love doesn't fully love them back. To my daughter and her wife, Indiana doesn't feel like a safe place to live because our state leadership, many who retain their seats today, voted intentionally to discriminate against them. As a mom, this broke my heart. And then it emboldened me. We have the power to change what hurts our children, our parents, our cousins, aunts and uncles, our friends, our neighbors, and our friends we haven't yet met. And our power is at the ballot box. So as a state senator, I will ensure that every bill proposed has LGBTQ inclusive policies, that every bill addresses discriminatory politics head on if they appear in any legislation. And I'll work to anticipate anti-discriminatory needs before they arise and work to build strong relationships throughout the state legislature and our communities that are diverse and inclusive of all. This is a personal story. This affects me, and I know there are many other moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandparents and siblings out there, as well as persons, LGBTQ persons who are affected by this. My perspective is a mom, and I will do anything for my children. So I'm excited to get to work and make Indiana a place where everyone feels welcome.
Oh, that's terrific. I'm so sorry that we lost your daughter. I think, there are many people like her who would have benefited our state, who now have left and benefit some other state. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so next I think we will be talking with Kat Hardwick from House District 69. So Kat, tell us what moves you on this issue.
Well, first of all, hello to everyone on the panel, and I just want to thank you all for being here today to discuss these very important issues regarding equality in Indiana for our LGBTQIA+ community. Senator Ford, thank you so much for being here and for representing all of us. As a queer woman myself and a candidate running for office here in Indiana, these issues impact myself and my family on a very deep and personal level. So I want to take us back to 2015 on a really happy note when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of same-sex marriage across the United States. This was obviously a huge and very hard-fought victory and worthy of much celebration. But like most Supreme Court rulings, there were still state laws regarding marriage and families that would need to be addressed. In fact, 5 years later, the statutes in Indiana have actually never been modified in regards to marriage being a heterosexual union in order to codify that ruling. So another issue I want to talk about in regards to same-sex spouses has to do with birth certificates. We know that they're basically the standard in determining parental rights, healthcare choices and decisions, education decisions, and so much more. So months after same-sex marriage was made legal, there were actually 2 women here in Indiana who were married, and they sued the Indiana Health Department after they were told they couldn't put both of their names on their son's birth certificate. Only one of them who actually carried the child was allowed to. The other one would essentially have to spend thousands of dollars in order to pay to adopt their own child to have that legal change made. Fortunately, though, the court did end up ruling in their favor. And then Indiana went on to appeal and lost again. But flash forward to now, actually earlier this year, Indiana appealed again, and our current our current Attorney General has actually petitioned the US Supreme Court to review this case and ask them to overturn it. So there are several other couples that are part of this lawsuit, and one of them are actually friends of mine. So I was able to reach out to her as well as their attorney. And after speaking to them, luckily they anticipate a favorable outcome in regards to this Supreme Court review. But I think it goes back to pointing out how hard the government in Indiana has continued to fight against families headed by same-sex couples. There's so much time, money, and resources that have been spent in an effort to legislate hate and discrimination. I mean, I think we truly need a proper system of checks and balances in regards to protecting human rights. And with the current supermajority, there is no way we have that. So that's why it's really imperative that you look at who you're voting for this November, check out their policy. If they have a voting record that you can check out, please do that. I know that everyone on this forum with me today are great candidates that are committed to preserving and protecting the rights of all Hoosiers. So in regards to the birth certificate, I know there has been at least one state that has passed actual legislation changing the way it's listed in terms of parent one, parent two, rather than mother, father. Since we've had such great luck in the judicial system, I'm not sure that we would go that route right now, but I have to point out again how concerning it is that the government here is willing to fight so hard against same-sex spouses and their families. So at the end of the day, it's really just about ensuring that protection for LGBTQ plus families and affording them all of the same protections and rights regarding their children as we do for heterosexual families. And I feel in my heart that the majority of Hoosiers are loving and welcoming to all. And I think that you will all elect officials this November, like myself and these other candidates, that really share in the values and will protect all families here in Indiana. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for sharing. Like I said, these are very personal stories, and this is just so important. I really thank you for sharing all of that. Okay, so I think next we're gonna talk with Tiffany Grant from House District 60. So Tiffany, tell us what issues concern you most in this area.
Thank you, Deb, and thank you for allowing me to be on this panel. Thank you, Senator Ford, for speaking with us this evening on this really important topic. My focus this evening is on the benefits of mental health care for the LGBTQ plus community. So we know that LGBTQ plus adults are more than twice as likely as their counterpart heterosexual adults to experience a mental health condition. Transgender individuals are nearly 4 times as likely as cisgender individuals to experience a mental health condition. Many in that community also face discrimination, denial of civil and human rights, harassment, and family rejection. We've heard from other candidates already about, and Senator Ford highlighted as well, some of that discrimination and denial of civil and human rights that are happening very specifically in Indiana. These stressors are problematic, particularly for those with intersecting racial or lower socioeconomic conditions. The benefits of providing better access to affordable mental health care are similar to the ones seen by providing mental health care across Indiana. But again, because the LGBTQ community is so much more greatly impacted by mental health care restrictions or lack of mental health care resources, these benefits are even more greatly achieved or benefited from. The first one is the reduction of self-medication through drug use. So we would actually see fewer cases of drug misuse and substance misuse. We would also see a decrease in instances of homelessness and a reduction in the number of suicides and fatalities related to mental health care or mental health crisis in individuals. In addition to those, we would also see a great improvement in the quality of lives for LGBTQ plus persons. Mental health care provides higher self-esteem and confidence, the ability to get through those tough situations as Indiana works to fix its climate of discrimination. They also would benefit from more satisfying and successful personal lives and work lives. We see better relationships from those who have access to mental health care and are able to overcome some of the battles that they have faced. Overall, access to mental health care for this community would lead to stronger, more integrated communities. We would see less of an us versus them system and more of a we society, where we would all work together to provide for the community and each other. I appreciate the time to be on the call tonight. Thank you so much.
That's great. Well, and thanks for bringing that issue up, Tiffany. I think this is so important. I mean, the rate of suicide among the LGBTQ community is way too high, and access to mental health services would so definitely make a difference in that. So, all right, well, thank you. Okay, and so next, I think we're gonna speak with Gary Davis. There you are. Okay, yes. And Gary, I know that you have a personal story to share as well. So,
my name is Gary Davis. I'm a candidate for Senate District 8, but I want to tell you a story from my law practice. I've been representing mentally and physically disabled people for more than 30 years. And in the course of doing that, represented a number of people in the LGBTQ plus community. But I spoke to one of my clients today. I had a hearing about 3 months ago, a transgender young person. I took the case originally for completely other reasons. You know, when you're a lawyer, you want to win your cases. That's the way we can make money. And my client had some severe physical problems, scoliosis, curvature of the spine, a cancer sufferer, a lot of problems that would be overwhelming for any child or any young person. So I took the case for that reason, because I thought I could help them win and get the benefits they were entitled to. However, his mother and my client, I'm going to call him John. That's not really his name, because ethically I couldn't tell you my client's name. You understand that. But when John and his mother started telling me some stories, it broke my heart. And I want to tell you about that if I could. His school community, he was young when these things were happening to him, were very supportive. The children supported him, cancer survivor, all these other physical, obvious problems that he had. They were very supportive. But the following school year, he came out as transgender. Immediately, he was isolated. All those children fled him, left him. I don't know if it's pressure from their families. I don't know the reasons for that necessarily. But I'll tell you, his mother told me it was overwhelming. He was isolated at school. He ate by himself. Nobody to be with him, nobody to support him, at least not any of his peers. And then his mother told me, and he told me some other things outside of the classroom, outside of the school situation, about family members, some immediate family members that, if not disowned them, at least separated themselves and isolated. So he was alone. You know, when you mentioned the suicide rate among adults, I think it's even greater with children in this situation. And his mother was concerned about that often. And also, she told me some other things that I had no idea about. It was an eye-opening experience for me. For example, they rarely wanted to give out their address, and they didn't want to give out too much information to a person or someone they didn't know for fear of being attacked, for fear of violence. I had no idea about this, and it was very much an eye-opening experience for me. Luckily, he was successful in his case and he won. But let me even tell you this much. I do cases in front of federal administrative law judges. That's my life, dealing with those cases. And the judge that I was in front of was a fair person, open-minded person. But even the judge on the issue of the transgender person and the mental health issues that he was struggling with, in addition to his physical problems, had difficulty with understanding, because my client had been so resilient and had so much courage that when he testified, he came across well. But I tried to explain to the judge, and the mother was very convincing in her testimony, and the judge did rule in his favor. My point tonight is that I may be late to the issue and new to the issue, but I feel like breaking down these barriers is very important. The people I represented over the years, I'm not a labor lawyer, but I know have been discriminated against because of the fact of their sexual orientation. Should not have been. Legally, they should not be doing that, but it happens on a regular basis, just like my clients are discriminated against for other reasons, racial issues, and also the bulk of the people I represent have mental or physical disabilities. For all those reasons, they're isolated and discriminated against. But my point to you is, the reason I wanted to bring attention to this is I think we should especially focus on children, particularly transgender children, because I think they're having a very difficult time right now, even though I do believe there's hope. What Senator Ford said and some of the other speakers have said, I think there is hope. Mental health is a key issue. So those are the things that touched me and brought my interest into this more so. And I want to thank you guys for doing this tonight. It really is something we need to be talking about. We need to be inclusive, not exclusive. We need to break down these barriers. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. And you're so right. We just need to be talking more. We just need to talk about it more. All right. So next we're going to talk with Tabitha Bartley. She's running for Senate District 7. So Tabitha, I know you are also a veteran, and that this issue overlaps with that understanding that you have.
Yes, I joined the Marine Corps in 2010, and at that time, don't ask, don't tell was a policy that we had. Later, the Department of Defense, they repealed that policy, and I was still in the Marine Corps at that time. Luckily for me, the Marines that I was around, it didn't have an impact because that didn't affect us. That wasn't something that we thought about or was a negative of a person or that we thought any less. A Marine was a Marine, a rifleman first. And so for me, it didn't affect, but I saw plenty of Marines whose career was affected by it. I'm running to make change happen in Indiana. And I think one of those things that we have to do is have more accessible and accountable veteran support across the state and a better quality of life for all Hoosiers. The Disabled American Veterans reported that an estimated 1 million lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender veterans are in the United States right now, and they have increased health risks. I would love to tell you the number of Indiana, but Indiana currently doesn't track. Our VA system doesn't track how many we have, and not tracking it means we can't do a better job of supporting them. So our minority veterans are at a higher risk because of this, and many of these veterans receive care outside of the VA because they don't feel welcome within the VA. For me, it's important that we address that, and we have to demand that our state VA start reporting and getting surveys and getting these numbers so that we know where we're missing. A lot of the issue is that in that community, they're not even getting the VA information. They don't know that the VA is accessible to them. They don't know what resources that the VA are there for them. So we have to make sure that that information is getting out to them. But if we are not tracking or aware of how many veterans we have, we can't get them the information. So it's even worse when it comes to, so our sexual minority female veterans are at a 39% more likely to have multiple chronic conditions. There are 33,000 women veteran in Indiana, and only 5,000 of them utilize the VA healthcare system. Already they are at a higher risk for multiple chronic conditions, and they're also at an 80% higher risk just being a female to commit suicide. So you add all of these other struggles to them. So the two things that we need to do is we need to make sure that our veteran support officers across the state have the same credentials and are trained properly and know everything that the VA has to offer. And we also have to make sure that our veteran support officers are a more diverse force. We need more females. We need more minorities. We need more LGBTQ within that population so they can support those veterans.
Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing all of that happen. I trust with your force, you are going to make this happen. All right. Okay, next we're going to talk with Angela Elliott, who's running for House District 93. So Angela, and I know this was an explicit part of your platform, and so I know you believe deeply in this issue. So tell us what your priorities are.
Thanks, Deb. And I want to echo all the thanks that everyone else has mentioned earlier. I feel very lucky to be on this panel with all of you, and I appreciate Deb and Shannon for organizing it, and Senator Ford for being here as well and sharing his perspective. I am running for House District 93 as a state representative, and my platform is the 4 E's: education, employment, the environment, and equality for all. So this issue does fit directly into the fourth plank of my platform. I had a lot of training as a leader at Eli Lilly and Company in diversity and inclusion. I grew up in a rural area and was very uninformed. Like many Hoosiers, I think one of our biggest enemies is ignorance. And we need to not only work on, we just need to increase the conversation, because I think how we battle ignorance is through education and not punishment. So, there may be people who aren't as aware or cognizant of the impacts of legislation or even their personal actions as we would like them to be. But the first step is to help educate them. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to go through all of that training at Lilly. And one of the things I did was help create training to bring supervisors together with employees faster by enabling to have conversations about difficult topics, like things like someone's sexual orientation. So one of the questions we trained supervisors to ask was, what might you be experiencing that I might not be aware of? And that simple question can bring out a lot of unique conversations that, if you have an open mind, can really move all of us forward in being better supporters of the LGBTQ community. So the specific issue related to legislation that I wanted to touch on is the bias crime legislation. And I know this one that is very dear to Senator Ford's heart, and that he was such a strong advocate in bringing and working on the legislation and having it, moving it forward. And I also know that he was very vocal after it was passed in its watered down version that really doesn't serve us in Indiana like it should. One of the things I found in doing my research about bias crime legislation, because it's not just about the LGBTQ community, but it's broader than that. But that bias crime legislation, I see us repeating history. I don't know if you're aware of it, but in 1947, we actually had a hate crimes bill. It was called, back then, it wasn't really called bias crimes. It was called hate crimes. That bill was passed in 1947, and it was struck down in the courts because it was too vague. And then in 1977, it quietly disappeared from the Indiana code, and in some readjusting of the code, but it was just kind of swept away and quietly. And then from 1977 on, we really didn't have hate crime or bias crime legislation in Indiana. And we got on that list of states that we don't want to be on. We, up until last year, we were on that. Oh, there are 5 states in the United States that don't have this kind of legislation. They're not willing to codify it into their laws. And so in 2019, when that legislation was passed in its watered down version, I think that backfired, because I think there was some of the motivation from some people was to pass that so it could get off that bad guy list, but they didn't really want it, so they watered it down. And unfortunately, that got us more national attention for being a state that is not inclusive. So I think it's really important that we realize that we're repeating history, and that here we are again. We've created another watered down version that will wind up getting challenged in the courts and won't be able to stand up, and is not being inclusive of everyone. And so we need to show that we're forward thinking. We need to bring more perspectives to the table in our state legislature. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. And I know a lot of the candidates on this call are running, is that we care about having our state legislature look like Indiana, represent the different perspectives in Indiana. So the more we bring that to the table, I think the more we will create that more environment where more of us can stand with JD and stand up for these things when they come up, and challenge when they're being watered down. And I believe that this education piece is a huge part of it. And it doesn't just start at the legislature. It starts in our homes. It starts in our schools. it continues in our communities. And we need to make sure that we're being intentionally inclusive, because if we don't try, if we don't intentionally include, we will unintentionally exclude. And so even the best of us need to continue to be educated. And one of the ways we do that, in addition to through our actions and all the places, is by codifying it in our laws, putting it in writing that hate and bias discrimination is not welcome in Indiana. It's just not what we're about. And we need to be intentional in putting that list of those things that are protected into that law, being brave and honest and transparent. And when those who are not in our state are wondering, are we being inclusive, we'll be able to show them on paper that we're trying. So it's my hope that with more progressive voices in the State House, we'll continue to make progress. And I hope to be a part of that.
Excellent. Oh, I so look forward to that, Angela. All right, thank you. Okay, and then next we're going to talk with Pat Boy. And Pat is an incumbent in House District 9. She was elected in 2018. But Pat has a long history of working to protect the LGBTQ community, even at a local level. So, so Pat, tell us about your experience.
Hold on. Am I unmuted?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, good. It's telling me I'm not, so I'm wondering. I was on city council in Michigan City for 15 years. And during that time, we passed an update to our human rights code, and we updated the discriminatory practices. And we call generally the exclusion of a person from or failure or refusal to extend to a person equal opportunities because of race, religion, color, sex, national origin, ancestry, disability, age, familial status, gender identity, military service, or sexual orientation, or the promotions of racial segregation in any manner are hereby declared to be unlawful discriminatory practices and are hereby declared to be illegal. Unlawful discriminatory practices shall include, but are not limited to, the practices enumerated in this division. And that included the right of employers to terminate unsatisfactory employees, city contracts, retaliation against individuals involved in investigations or obstructing enforcement, unlawful housing practices, blockbusting, discrimination by employers, discrimination by labor organizations, discrimination in apprenticeship or training programs, discrimination by employment agencies, by operators of public places of public accommodation or amusement, by educational institutions, in the use of city-owned property, and based on age. Those are all covered under our city code. Unfortunately, city code is not criminal code, so we need to change it at the state level as well. I did work on it last year. I had a bill for bias crimes, and I included the definition of discrimination that we had in our city code. Unfortunately, there were so many, mine did not get heard in committee. I think I'm going to bring it back again this year. My platform this term is exactly the same as it was last year. Social, economic, and environmental justice for everyone, especially the most vulnerable among us. And in a lot of ways, the LGBTQ plus community is one of the most vulnerable. And I think we need to do everything we can to rectify the situation. I plan to do that. Thank you so much for including me in this call.
Absolutely. It's always great to hear from you, Pat. And you've been at this for a long time, so we appreciate that. So, okay, so JD, I want to go back to you now. And I hope that you can share with us. I mean, this has been really, you know, some very emotional and personal stuff. And this is what's out there. And so I guess I can see why it's hard to talk about, but I can also see why we really need to do much more talking. So what do you think?
Yes, I think everyone should just take a deep breath. We talked and covered a lot this time,
Yeah.
and I'm so happy and thankful that we're having this conversation because, you know, I like many of you, know someone who lives or resides in this community. And, you know, Harvey Milk said, you know, a long time ago that once people start coming out and once people start to getting to know folks inside the community, it's not necessarily the scary monster anymore, right? And so, so I'm just so thankful again to all of you for running and really supporting the community. So just my many thanks to each of you. But I took some notes as you all were talking, and so I'll just kind of run down that very quickly. But I heard that young folks are fleeing our state because we're not a welcoming state. That breaks my heart. And I know that the governor knows this because he was at the Ball State commencement address begging young folks to stay in our state. And so to hear folks leaving here because of the national conversation that came here for the RFRA, and Angela, you pointed out the hate crimes conversation, people somewhat see us as kind of a backward state. And so we really need to turn that, that reputation around, because we know, talking with our neighbors, that we are the Hoosier hospitality. We know that it's everything good of Indiana. So that really, I kind of captured that. Kat, I heard you say we need balance, right? We need to break that supermajority. If we can get all of you in there, we can be able to do that, and we can kind of stop some of these hateful proposals from even getting to the floor. And so that's what I'm really excited about. Tiffany, I heard you talk about mental health care for LGBTQ plus folks, and you're exactly right. We need to make it easier for folks to have access to that mental health care. I'm proud to work with an organization called OutCare here in Indiana. They're becoming a national organization, but it's really a list of providers who are LGBTQ plus friendly. And so I can't agree with you more. I agree with you 100% about mental health care for LGBTQ folks. Gary, I heard the struggles of your clients, right? And, I would just ask our friends on the other side of the aisle, just stop a minute and put yourself in those shoes. Put yourself in the shoes of that mother or father who was trying to bring up John in this environment, right? And, and sometimes I think people just feel like, oh, it's doesn't happen to me, so why should I bother, or why should I care, right? But if we could just show a little bit more empathy, we would be in a much better place in our state. Tabitha, I heard you talk about LGBTQ plus and veterans, and so I think a lot of times people don't think that those two folks or those two things overlap, but they totally do. We know that there are LGBTQ folks who are proudly serving our nation, and so we need to support them as best as we can. And I'm proud to work with a group called AVER Indiana, which stands for American Veterans for Equal Rights. And so we have a chapter here in Indiana, and so I'm proud to work with them. When I first got elected, that was my first kind of act of duty, was to walk with them in the Veterans Day Parade down here in Indianapolis. And then, Angela, I think your comments on the hate crimes is spot on. And I really, what's really telling is that, we know that Black transgender women are the folks who are under attack really in this country. And so the fact that we don't have a hate crimes law on the books to cover those folks is shameful. And so we know that it's left out gender identity, and age. So and then to my good dear friend, Representative Boy, we came in the legislature together, and I just adore all of the work that you do, and just thank you for everything you're doing, and thank you for being a partner. So I just have a couple more things to say. You can expect more shenanigans from our friends on the other side of the aisle, and so whether that would be picking up the fight on the gender markers on the driver's license, or the bill that didn't go anywhere, thankfully, last year, but picking on our Hoosier transgender students in the sports that they play. I'm sure we'll see that bill come back. We just need good people in the legislature. And so I'm really excited to work with all of you, and I will support you in whatever way I can to get you across the finish line this November. 50 days. We have 50 days to go. And so I'm really excited about that. But also, I know we're talking about LGBTQ issues tonight, But why it's also important to get you in there next year is it's a budget year. And so we're going to have a vote and a say on where our dollars should go, but also it's redistricting next year. And so we need you in those seats because we know our friends are going to tinker with those maps. And so having you there and using your voice to fight back is going to be so crucial. So thanks again for inviting me and letting me hang out with all of you. It's been fun to talk with you on these very crucial issues. And as important as these issues are and the stories that we've heard tonight, there are stuff that we could be doing, right? We need to kind of set these issues aside. We need to stop the attacks on the LGBTQ plus community, and we need to get back to governing our state and creating a more inclusive state for everybody. So thanks again for the opportunity tonight.
Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Okay, and so on that same note, the other thing that we can all do right now is make sure that we are registered to vote. Make sure everyone you know is registered to vote. And check your own registration. There have been some crazy voter roll purges that are unpredictable and significant. So make sure that you go to indianavoters.com to check your own registration, to register to vote. You can also request an absentee ballot from that website if you are eligible. And you can find out where to go to early vote, which starts on October 6th. And the hours and the location for early voting. And you can find out your location for election day, November 3rd voting. And you can find out who's on your ballot. So, so that's a wealth of information. So again, indianavoters.com is where you need to go. So I just can't tell you how grateful I am, JD, to have you here and to have you in our legislature. You just have done a phenomenal job, and you really make all of this easier for everyone else here. You know, you open the platform for everyone here, and that's a huge gift. So, and thank you to everyone else. I'm gonna send it over to Shannon now, and she will close us up. All right, so you're muted.
Unmute myself. Thanks, Deb. Watching tonight has been very powerful. And it's also been very clarifying why we at 25 Women for 2020 are believing in an innovative, prosperous, and equitable future for all Hoosiers. And I know you do too, but to make that happen, we need to empower these campaigns. There's an easy way to do it. You can go to 25womenfor2020.org. There's an easy button on there. You can click it next to each candidate and find out more information about their platforms and their qualifications. You can also find Gary Davis on Facebook and get involved in his campaign. It does take you to empower. Just inboxes will connect you with any of these campaigns to get involved. And we encourage an investment in these campaigns to make sure they can get their message out. And we can't thank you enough for everybody showing up today and watching this. It has truly been a moving night. Thank you all.
All right. All right. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.